quite thin, and you can take up almost your entire page. Now, you don't have to make the biggest Dory of all time, but you are welcome to. You just need a little bit of room above and below in order to do that. We're going to add a ton of these ovals so that you have options to choose from. I make like 10. You can really make as many as you want. But we're going to use this and we're going to add some construction lines. Now our first line is actually going to be a C curve that starts maybe like a fourth of the way into the oval. It's not very far in. We're going to bring across this big C curve that curves back toward the right side of the page. Now that tells us that Dory is actually going to be looking mostly off to the left-hand side. This is what we call a 3/4 turn because she's going to be looking mostly in that direction. This allows us to see the side of her head as well as the front of her face, so we can kind of see her entire body. We're then going to go about a third of the way from the top, and this is going to be her eye line. This is going to help us find some of those facial features. And those eyes are going to be the first specific details that we add. So starting on top of this line, I'm going to add a circle. This circle's not sitting up against that C curve there, but it's very close to it. And you want a few of these so that you have options to choose from. Now on the other side, we're going to add the same, we're going to add a very similar shape. It's going to be the same in height, but you want it to be a tiny bit thinner. So this is going to turn more into an oval, not quite as thin as the first one that we made. But we want this to sit mostly in her head shape, just slightly poking out. So in order to give us this concept that her other eye is further away, it's just a tiny bit thinner. But you want to make sure it's the same in height, so she doesn't look too lopsided. Now at the moment we have what looks like a very fancy coffee bean, like he's got some glasses or something. But we're going to start to darken in those eyes because right now everything's starting to fade into the background. It's all starting to combine. So we're going to start to lock in this circle here. And that really just means that I'm pushing down on my pencil. And you're going to notice that as I push down on my pencil here, all of the light lines really start to disappear. This allows the dark lines to stand out, really take the focus. So if you didn't like something on your drawing, that's perfectly okay. It's going to disappear entirely. You're only going to see these dark lines at the very end. On the inside of her eyes, we're going to add her pupils. Now, throughout both of the films, what we see for her pupils are actually additional ovals that sit toward the inside corners. However, if you want to give her a different shape, it'll still look like Dory. So if you want to give her hard eyes, you want to put shells in there. We learned in Finding Dory, she really loves shells. Everyone remembers Baby Dory, right? Yes. Okay, she was my favorite part of that whole movie. And she's like, I like shells. She also likes sand. She's the absolute opposite of Anakin Skywalker. And he doesn't like it because it's, of course, rough and irritating. And she does like it because she says it's squishy. So there you go. I'm going to add some little ovals on the inside, though. And I'm going to place these toward the inside corners. Now, you don't have to do this, but my goal is to make her look slightly cross-eyed. She kind of does this throughout the film. It gives her this very silly look. By giving her just a slight cross-eye, nothing crazy, but by placing these directly in those corners there, getting the two ovals as close as you can in those circles, it does give her that effect. Now I'm shading that in nice and dark so that we can see those pupils, no matter what shape you choose. You want to make sure you shade that in nice and dark there. And then we're going to start to move up and we're going to give her eyebrows. Now her eyebrows are actually going to tell us about her emotions. So if she's feeling sad or happy, we're going to see that in these first. The first one sits above her eye, which is going to look kind of like a stretched out candy cane. It's going to be like a little rainbow that curves toward the inside of the oval. On the other side, we have a lot more space. So we're going to add a floating rainbow, just kind of filling in this space here. You don't want it to go all the way to the side of the oval, but pretty close. And there we go. The higher you make those eyebrows, the more surprised she's going to look. So if you want to make it look like she's shocked by something, like they ran into Lake Bruce again, you definitely can by lifting those up just a tiny bit. And then we're going to move down and we're going to start to build up that personality. Now, a lot of her personality comes through her words, and we're going to give her a big smile to show that. Now, her smile is actually going to start from the eye, oddly enough. We're going to bring down this pretty much straight line going outside of the oval just a tiny bit until you get about a third of the way from the bottom. At that point, we're going to curve this up with a big U going up toward the other eye. And to show that her smile is super big, I'm just gonna add a little rainbow at the top to show that it's pushing up her cheek. And I mentioned that a lot of that personality comes through her words, but who voices Dory? Yeah, Ellen DeGeneres. Yeah, she gives her like that really great personality. And while this is very common throughout acting, right, that we like really see that like character portrayed through their voice, Ellen was actually the reason that Dory was even a big part of this film at all. Because in the very beginning of like when they were first creating Finding Nemo, they actually weren't planning on having Dory be like this character that was wandering around with Marlin. It was actually going to be Gil. Do you remember Gil from the fish tank, like in the doctor's office? Yeah, Gil was going to be with Marlin throughout the entire process. However, they thought that they were missing something from the script. Something felt off. It wasn't quite clicking. So they were the director. He actually he brought this like script home, and he was reading it over, trying to figure out what he was going to do with this like entire thing. And in the background, his wife was watching the Ellen show. Now, with that in mind, he was reading this script with Ellen's voice, just kind of playing throughout his head. And he loved the way that she was going from topic to topic, because she was like never on one topic at the same time. And he really liked it. It was very sporadic. It brought a lot of energy to the concept. So he actually decided to rewrite it, have Gil go to the dentist's office, and have Dory follow along. So he rewrote this entire character with Ellen in mind. And thankfully, when he contacted Ellen, she was down for the project. Or else I guess it would have been kind of weird, huh? Now I added her little tooth here, which is just a little U, nothing crazy. And then we're gonna open up her mouth. Now this is gonna start right out that tooth here. Inside of the oval, we're gonna bring down another U and bring this up toward the rainbow. Giving her an open mouth like this really shows that personality. She's very happy, very optimistic, and she talks a lot. So we like to leave that nice and open. If you want some extra credit, you can shade in the inside of her mouth. Now, if you feel like you're running behind, you don't have to shade in her mouth. It's always extra credit. You don't need it. But I'm going to do that entirely, and we can add some more detail there as well. Now, Ellen was also a very big reason that they decided to make a sequel to this film, because in the very beginning, they were not intending to make a sequel at all. But she loved playing Dory so much that she was actually pushing forward, and she was like, please make a sequel. And they were like, no, we don't have a story. And then years later, they actually did come up with a concept. Now, does anyone know the year difference between Finding Nemo and Finding Dory? Yeah, it was a lot. It was 13 years. That's how long it took them to make this sequel. And the entire thing was actually based off of one line that Dory said in Finding Nemo. Who does she say she's looking for when she runs into Marlin? She's looking for her family. That's what she said. She's looking for her family. She can't find them anywhere. They took this one line and then they were like, cool, let's really give Dory this whole story. Because what was she looking for in the first place, right? She forgot, but she eventually did come back to that, and she was able to find her family. So I think it's really cute, and it did kind of complete that story for her at least. Now we're going to go next to her mouth here. We're going to build up her fins. She's a fish. She needs to be able to swim around. So I'm going to add this tiny little dot inside of my oval, right next to the mouth. And I'm going to go from this dot, and we're going to bring up a diagonal that goes outside of the oval and above that horizontal line that we made. Her fins are very sharp. They're going to look kind of like a triangle. So we're going to bring across another diagonal a lot flatter, and we're going to connect these with a straight line. This is supposed to make her look very fast. She's a very fast swimmer. So we're giving her these very sharp angles to show that. We're also going to see a bit of her tail kind of poking out from the side. And this sits very similar to that fin. I'm going to start about halfway up that. I'm going to add a diagonal. But on the bottom, it's more like a rainbow. So we're going to add this rainbow curving down and connecting these one more time. It ironically looks like the Sydney Opera House right there, because what's the address that she remembers? Yeah, P. 42 Wildboy, Sydney, you got it. I was like, I couldn't even remember my own address when I was a child, but that one, I could find it. They just really engraved that into my brain, but it kind of works. I love that. Now we're going to lock in both of these fins here, her tail and her fin, and we're also going to lock in the remainder of the oval. So just anything that's not being covered up by her eyebrows or any of those other details, you can start to go around and darken in as well. Now, when they were doing their studying for these films, they actually had to do a ton of research. This is something that Pixar is very fond of. Whatever their movie is, they always do their research to make sure that everything is accurate. This really helps with the believability of the movie, because if you are an expert about the ocean and you watch a movie involving the ocean and it's wrong, you're not going to stop thinking about it, right? And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted it to be very friendly to all audiences. So when they were making both of these films, they actually took a lot of marine biology courses, and they were taking, they were learning ichthyology, which is like the study of fish. They were learning oceanography. They were going through all the biologies, and they were doing all of that research to make sure that everything worked. And even in the first film, they learned a lot about all of the fish, including clownfish, because you remember where they live? Yeah, the anemones, right? And they learned that, which I think is a really cool fact, because clownfish have adapted themselves to live in these anemones. They don't get shocked by them, because typically if you touched it, it would shock you, and that's what protects them while they're sleeping. So while they're in there, all of these other fish can't bother them. They're completely safe. And we can even see that in this sequel. At one point, Dory wakes up for a nightmare, and she goes to talk to them and gets zapped. She just keeps forgetting that she can't go in there, but they can, and it confuses her a little bit. But that's one of the many things that they learned. And if they didn't do their research, these clownfish would probably just be hanging out on the coral reef, right? It just wouldn't be the same. It gives them a very unique story. Now that we do have that whole outline there, she's looking a little lost. So we need to give her some details, right? Now we're going to do that by going to the top of her head. We're going to give her some fin, some of these fins here. These little, kind of looks like she has a mohawk. We're going to add this really curvy candy cane shape, just like this rainbow, slightly leaving the oval. We're going to see something very similar on the bottom. We're going to curve this back. But the difference with this one is we're going to add a little U to bring it back. This is another thing that makes her look kind of fast. We've got a little sharp line there, and it's very round on the top. And when they really were doing all of that study, not only did they learn about clownfish, but they also learned about Dory as well and her species. Now, do you remember what kind of fish she is? Yeah, she's a royal blue tang. Now, when they were doing this studying, especially for the second film, they actually learned that these fish, when they are babies, are actually not blue. Because she's blue, yellow, and black, right? Those are all of those little details. And what they learned was that they're actually that bright yellow when they're babies. Now, if you remember, I mentioned her earlier, we do see baby Dory in this film, but she is not bright yellow. And that's because they were worried that audiences wouldn't trust that this was actually Dory. They were worried she would come on the screen and be like, "Hi, I'm Dory." And people would be like, "Liar, she's yellow. It doesn't look like her at all." So they actually had to break logic a little bit in this movie. So typically they learn exactly all of the rules. And sometimes they'll break the rules on purpose just to make the film a little easier to watch. Because it is a little hard, especially for children, to understand that a fish might change color. And especially because she looked so different when she was a baby. So if you ever go to an aquarium and they were like, "That's a royal blue tang, and it's a bright yellow little fish," they're not lying to you. That is very much the truth. They just have to change things sometimes. Now I'm adding some detail throughout her fins. I just add little curved lines going throughout all of them. And on the front one, that first triangular fin that we made, I added a little border here just to show a black stripe. The very last thing that we want to build up for our Dory is that detail inside of her body. And this actually starts off at the top of her eyebrows. It's two big curves going from the eyebrows up. It makes her look like Avatar: The Last Airbender for a second there. I know we don't own that show, but I just really like it, so haha. Anyways, I'm then just going to add this big S curve that goes from the eyebrow and down toward the bottom of her body. Big S curve with a little C above her fin. And these are pretty unique depending on the fish as well. And we can see this on her parents. One of my favorite details about this movie is just, it's so small, but when they were creating her parents, they somehow gave a fish a receding hairline. Her dad has one, and I was like, he doesn't even have any hair. But you could tell they were having fun when they were making it. They were like, why not? Because we can, right? So I'm just going to shade in that portion. Feel free to, if you have time to do so. The last thing that you want to add is just anything extra credit wise. So if you want to put something in the background, you can put a little bit of bubbles. You can give her some freckles. She actually has freckles because Ellen has freckles, so they wanted to give her a little nod. You can put some sand below her, but whenever you're done, find a spot on your page and sign your name, nice and proud, and that's it, you drew Dory. Now, I would love to see all of your amazing drawings. So we're going to do a quick art show. On the count of 3, I'm going to have you lift up your boards nice and proud. We're going to see how you did, all right?